Right now, at 6, the punishment for a man who murdered a mail carrier, with the victim's family speaking out at sentencing.
You know, she's going to go without having a father for the rest of her life.
Plus, time ticks down in Salem as the rhetoric heats up.
Both parties want the election date they want for partisan political reasons.
So will it be May or November when you get to decide on whether to increase your taxes?
Then, we go inside a drone operations center to see how sheriff's deputies are using their eye in the sky to track down suspects and keep officers safe.
But first, to breaking news and a bit of a traffic mess just south of downtown Portland, where a rock fall shut down 2 lanes of southbound I-5 and right at the start of the evening rush. You can see this is good news. Things are moving. All lanes have just reopened, but we are seeing lingering congestion backing up on I-5, I-405, and even on westbound I-84. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Christine Pitawanich. ODOT says it's not certain what caused the fall near the Corbett overpass, but say heavy rain could have been a factor there. Usually, netting might catch the rocks that fall, but officials say these rocks were larger than normal. Again, the road has just fully reopened moments ago.
Well, we'll keep you posted on that. Tonight, we're also following the aftermath of a deadly crash between a Salem-Kaiser school bus and an SUV in West Salem. This was on Highway 22 around 10 this morning.
State police tell us the bus driver and 1 student were taken to the hospital with minor injuries. The driver of the SUV died. The district says around 60 high school students were on a field trip on their way to Western Oregon University. The students returned to school and counselors were on hand. No word yet on the cause of that crash.
Developing tonight, with both sides accusing each other of playing politics, a move to have Oregon voters decide this May on whether to increase their transportation taxes is now one step closer to reality.
Celine Stevens was listening in on the Senate hearing. She joins us live near I-405 with the very latest. Celine, run us through what we know.
Christine. So Senate Bill 1599 passed after a couple of hours of discussion with 17 votes in favor and 13 votes against, meaning voters might have the possibility of voting on the state's funding package on May 19th.
When you have a process, when you have a referendum process, you shouldn't change it on a whim at the last minute.
Senate Bill 1599, which would shift the referendum on last year's transportation funding bill from November to May, passed in a 17-13 vote Monday afternoon, despite many attempts to delay the vote.
Senator Brock Smith moves that consideration of Senate Bill 1599 be taken from its place on today's calendar and be placed on the March 8th calendar.
I move that Senate Bill 1599 be referred to the Committee on Rules.
I move that Senate Bill 1599 be referred to the Legislative Council Committee.
All those motions failing. Democrats say the sooner voters can weigh in, the better for the state's transportation funding.
The sooner that we in this governing body can get explicit direction from the public, the sooner that we in the legislature can get to work on the difficult task of finding a long-term solution that protects and preserves our existing public infrastructure.
Republicans argue the Democrats' push to speed up the vote to the primary election in May is just them playing politics.
We risk undermining processes that don't protect the voters if we undermine them, and we risk burdening political speech.
It tells the process of input by citizens you're no longer needed, you're no longer wanted, and the citizens are no longer heard.
Nearly 250,000 Oregonians signed a petition that explicitly said November 3rd was the election date. Now, Senate Bill 1599 seeks to break that contract.
ODOT has warned of a $242 million budget shortfall, which could lead to layoffs and service cuts. The referendum will decide whether to repeal increases in taxes and fees to fund transportation maintenance and operations.
Every single Oregonian who are eligible to vote will have the ability to vote this measure on May 19.
The bill now moves to the Oregon House of Representatives. The only Democrat to vote against the passage was Democrat Mark Meek. Back to you.
Celine Stevens reporting live along 405. Thank you, Celine. Portland police arrested a suspected prolific graffiti vandal known by the tag name Rango. They say over the years, 22-year-old William Matthews tagged businesses, homes, and public spaces with damages estimated in the tens of thousands of dollars. Officers say they seized more than 150 cans of spray paint, 14 one-gallon buckets of paint, rollers, brushes, custom Rango stickers, and paint-stained clothing. Matthews is now facing at least 8 counts of criminal mischief.
Officials in Georgia confirmed today that former WNBA star Kara Braxton died in a car crash over the weekend. Braxton went to high school in Beaverton. Police say she crashed into a concrete barrier while driving on the interstate near Atlanta on Saturday. Braxton is a 2-time WNBA champion who played for 10 seasons. She spent most of her high school years playing for Westview High. Braxton was just 43 years old and is survived by her husband and 2 sons.
The TSA Pre-Check program is running today at airports across the country after a brief suspension. It's due to the partial government shutdown affecting funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The department said Sunday both TSA Pre-Check and global entry programs would be paused, but then a few hours later said Pre-Check would continue to operate. TSA agents are working without pay right now, and DHS says staffing shortages were behind the decision to pause the program, adding they'll reevaluate if needed. The global entry program remains suspended. Matt?
Well, I'm sure a lot of the airports in the Northeast are seeing major cancellations because of the nor'easter, the bomb cyclone, the blizzard, if you will. This is what it looked like on the satellite imagery. Here's New York City. Here's Boston up here, just skirting the coast of southern New England, and the snowfall totals have been impressive. As much as 3 feet in parts of Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. That storm pulling out to sea. For us, it's been a rainy day, a really rainy Monday. We've still got rain. It's light right now, 42 degrees at the moment. And the rain will pick up and then decrease at times overnight tonight, but never really end as we stick with this steady rainfall overnight and into the morning hours. But this is the wet part of the week, because after tomorrow, things really dry out. And the heaviest rain actually with the systems down in southern Oregon. So rain tonight, look out for standing water on the roadways. Showers tomorrow, but it's going to end tomorrow evening. And then we go to some really nice weather to finish off February and begin the month of March. More on that later, guys.
Sounds great. Looking forward to a break. Thanks, Matt.
In an update, a Clackamas County man has been sentenced to 25 years in prison for killing a mail carrier.
Thomas Schultz was in the courtroom.
Back in September of 2024, 53-year-old Chad Westover stabbed Tristan Thomas with a kitchen knife. Thomas was a local mail carrier. It happened at an apartment complex on Southeast Sunnyside Road. Prosecutors say it started after Thomas had a dispute with his neighbor, Christopher Stewart, over a parking spot. Stewart is Westover's cousin. During the dispute, the district attorney's office says Thomas pepper sprayed Stewart. Later that night, Thomas encountered Stewart's daughter, which is when Chad Westover confronted Thomas. A scuffle began and Westover stabbed Thomas several times. Thomas died days later at a hospital. Today, Westover apologized to Thomas's family. And while Thomas's family says justice was served, they're concerned about his 13-year-old daughter, who now is growing up without a father.
If I could go back in time, this wouldn't happen. And, my instincts kicked in. I'm sorry.
You know, she's going to go without having a father for the rest of her life. And the fact that he was murdered is going to really have an impact on her growing up.
Though defense attorneys tell us that Westover stabbed Thomas in self-defense, they're now pushing for a new trial. Litigation over whether there will be a new trial is set to begin, according to prosecutors, on March 31st. In Clackamas County, Thomas Schultz, KGW News.
What are known as swatting calls are picking up in parts of Washington County, and deputies are trying to find out who's behind it. Swatting, by the way, is when someone makes a false emergency report to provoke law enforcement to respond. The first call came in early Sunday. Deputies say someone reported a shooting at the Commons at the Avalon Park Apartments in Tigard, only to discover it was fake. They were called back to the same complex when someone said they shot their mother and were holding their 7-year-old brother hostage. A SWAT team went out but found that call was fake too.
It's not terribly uncommon. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is certainly a growing concern for us as swatting calls come in. And when I mean swatting calls, it means a call that isn't really happening. You know, someone is calling into dispatch, reporting an emergency that isn't happening.
Oregon lawmakers are working on a bill that would increase penalties for swatting.
Developing tonight, plumes of smoke rose into the sky across parts of Mexico after vehicles were set on fire following the killing of a major cartel leader. Tonight, we're hearing from some Portland travelers stuck in the country. The U.S. State Department still warning Americans in some places, including Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, to shelter in place and to avoid all areas with law enforcement activity. Airlines have also canceled flights in and out of those two cities, including to and from PDX. Katie Bennett is a Portlander who arrived for an annual girls trip in PV last Thursday. She says they were having a great time until yesterday when things changed dramatically.
I think there has been moments of uncertainty. There have been a lot of helicopters flying very close overhead for the Mexican military. And just, I think when the booms get closer to you and you start seeing all the fires getting closer and closer, you get a little more anxiety. But things have really quieted down this morning, so it's definitely feeling much better.
Bennett says it's unclear when it will be safe to leave the country. Airlines, including Alaska, now have flexible travel waivers in place. El Mencho, that's the name of the drug kingpin targeted in the Mexican military operation, was a key target for both Mexican and American law enforcement. The U.S. even labeling his group a terror organization. By the way, for more specifics on the security alert, you want to check the State Department's Mexico country page.